Anya Petrova, a rising star in the Earth Federation's diplomatic corps, exhaled a long breath as she gazed out the panoramic window of the high-speed shuttle. The cityscape of Coruscant Prime, the galactic capital, sprawled below like a glittering neural network, each pulsing light a hub of interstellar intrigue. Anya's heart hammered in her chest, a familiar blend of anticipation and nerves. Today marked a pivotal moment in her career, a chance to prove the Federation's worth on the galactic stage. The shuttle docked with a towering council spire, its gleaming chrome exterior a testament to the wealth and power of the Galactic Council. Stepping out, Anya felt a wave of curious gazes wash over her. Humans, relative newcomers to the galactic community, were still a novelty, their presence often met with a mix of skepticism and thinly veiled disdain. But Anya was no ordinary diplomat. Her colleagues at the Federation headquarters had a saying about her: give Anya Petrova a locked room and a cryptic message, and she'll unlock the secrets of the universe. It was a testament to her razor-sharp intellect, her mastery of linguistics, and her uncanny ability to read between the lines, both in verbal and non-verbal communication. She entered the main council chamber, its grandeur overwhelming in its scale. Representatives from countless worlds filled the tiered seating, their diverse forms a testament to the vastness of the galaxy. Anya took her assigned seat beside the elder statesman, Ambassador Wu, his weathered face a mask of practiced calm. "Don't let the spectacle intimidate you, Anya," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the din of alien chatter. "Remember, every being in this room, no matter how many tentacles or compound eyes, is driven by the same basic desires: power, security, and a place in the universe." A hush fell over the chamber as the Council's High Chancellor, a stoic avian with piercing amber eyes, began the proceedings. The agenda was clear and dire: to broker a lasting peace with the Krillian Empire, a brutal regime that had engulfed the galaxy in war for decades. As the High Chancellor droned on about the importance of diplomacy and the dire consequences of failure, Anya's gaze shifted to the towering figure seated across the chamber. Warlord Tsar, the Krillian Tyrant, exuded an aura of menace, his cold, reptilian eyes scanning the room with a predator's focus. Anya knew that the fate of countless worlds, including her own, rested on her ability to outmaneuver this formidable adversary. The weight of the responsibility settled on her shoulders, heavy and exhilarating. It was time to play her hand. The negotiations began with the expected posturing. Alien delegates, representing worlds ravaged by the Krillian Empire's relentless conquest, voiced their grievances with a mix of righteous anger and cautious hope. Tsar, the Tyrant, listened with thinly veiled disdain, his posture radiating barely contained power. Anya observed the proceedings with an anthropologist's eye. She'd spent countless hours studying the Krillian language, its guttural tones and complex syntax. But it was the non-verbal cues that fascinated her, the subtle twitch of Tsar's crest when a particularly damning accusation was leveled, the barely perceptible shift in the posture of the avian delegates when their representative spoke too boldly. When it was the Earth Federation's turn to speak, all eyes turned to Anya. A murmur rippled through the chamber as she rose to address the assembly. The humans were still considered an unknown quantity, their diplomatic prowess untested in galactic affairs. But Anya had a plan, a carefully crafted strategy born of countless simulations and late nights spent poring over historical texts. "Esteemed delegates," she began, her voice clear and resonant, "the Earth Federation understands the pain and suffering inflicted by this devastating conflict. We come to these negotiations not as conquerors, but as healers, seeking to mend the wounds that have torn our galaxy apart." A ripple of surprise went through the chamber. This wasn't the usual bravado of galactic diplomacy, the veiled threats and boasts of military might. Anya's words, though carefully chosen, were disarmingly sincere. She went on to outline a proposal for peace, not based on reparations or punitive measures, but on mutual cooperation and shared resources. Tsar scoffed audibly, his reptilian sneer echoing through the chamber. "Human," he boomed, his voice dripping with condescension, "your naive idealism is as amusing as it is irrelevant. The Krillian Empire does not negotiate with weaklings. Anya met his gaze with unwavering resolve. Strength, warlord Tsar, comes in many forms, she retorted. Military might is but one aspect. True power lies in the ability to unite, to heal, to forge a future where all species can thrive. Her words hung in the air, a challenge to the established order, a seed of hope planted in a galaxy desperate for peace. The other delegates, intrigued by Anya's audacity and the fresh perspective she brought to the table, leaned forward in their seats. The negotiations were far from over, but Anya had made her mark. The game was afoot, and the unlikely human diplomat had just played her opening gambit. The first round of negotiations proved to be as tense and unproductive as Anya had anticipated. Tsar, the Krillian tyrant, seemed intent on playing a game of intimidation, his every word dripping with veiled threats and thinly veiled insults. The other delegates, though eager for peace, were wary of incurring the wrath of the Krillian Empire. Anya spent hours poring over the transcripts of the day's discussions, analyzing the subtle shifts in language and tone. One phrase, uttered by a representative of the beleaguered Elosian species, caught her attention. It was a seemingly innocuous comment about the changing tides of fortune, but the underlying message was clear. The Elosians were reaching their breaking point, their desperation for peace teetering on the edge of open rebellion against the Krillian occupation. This was the opening Anya had been waiting for. She requested a private meeting with the Elosian ambassador, a weary-looking insectoid with shimmering chitinous armor. In a secluded chamber, away from the prying eyes of the Krillian spies, Anya laid out her plan. "Ambassador," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "I believe we share a common goal, to end this senseless conflict and secure a just peace for all. But to achieve this, we must work together, leverage our collective strength against the tyrant's arrogance." The Elosian ambassador remained silent for a long moment, their antennae twitching in contemplation. Finally, they spoke, their voice a raspy clicking sound. "The risks are great, human. Tsar does not tolerate dissent. If he discovers our alliance—" Anya nodded, acknowledging the danger. "But the risks of inaction are even greater. The Krillian Empire will continue its reign of terror, consuming world after world, until there is nothing left to conquer. We must act now, before it's too late." The ambassador's eyes, compound and multifaceted, seemed to pierce through Anya's soul. "Very well, human," they said at last. "I am willing to gamble on your plan. But be warned, failure is not an option." The following day, as the negotiations resumed, Anya watched Tsar closely. The tyrant was growing increasingly impatient, his frustration evident in his clenched fists and the subtle twitching of his tail. Anya seized the moment, rising to address the council. "Warlord Tsar," she began, her voice calm but firm, "I believe you have underestimated the resolve of those you seek to oppress. The Elosian people, though weary of war, are not broken. They will not be cowed by your threats." Tsar's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint in their depths. "Are you threatening me, human?" Anya smiled, a predator's grin that belied her gentle demeanor. "Not at all, warlord. I am merely stating a fact. The Elosian people, like countless others under your rule, yearn for freedom and self-determination, and they are not alone." A hush fell over the chamber as Anya's words hung in the air. The Elosian ambassador, their face carefully impassive, subtly shifted their posture, a signal of solidarity that did not escape Tsar's notice. The tyrant's jaw clenched, his composure momentarily shattered. The first gambit had been played. The dance of diplomacy had just taken a dangerous, exhilarating turn. The fallout from Anya's bold declaration rippled through the negotiations like a shockwave. The Elosian ambassador maintained their stoic facade, but Anya caught a subtle twitch of their mandibles, a sign of barely contained tension. Other delegates exchanged furtive glances, their expressions a mix of apprehension and admiration. Tsar, however, remained unflappable. "An alliance of the weak," he sneered, leaning back in his imposing throne-like seat. "Your pathetic attempts at resistance are futile. The Krillian Empire will crush any who dare challenge our authority." Anya met his gaze, her own eyes blazing with a fire he hadn't anticipated. Authority, warlord, she countered, is not simply a matter of brute force. It requires the trust and cooperation of those you govern. A lesson, it seems, your empire has yet to learn. The negotiations continued, but the dynamics had shifted. Anya's words had planted a seed of doubt in the minds of some of the delegates, a flicker of hope that perhaps the tyrant wasn't as invincible as he seemed. In the following days, Anya shifted her focus to building those fragile alliances. She sought out the representatives of the oppressed species, listening to their stories of suffering and resilience. She learned their languages, their customs, their hopes and dreams for a future free from Krillian tyranny. One evening, she found herself in a dimly lit alcove with the ambassador of the Venusian collective, a race of empathic beings known for their wisdom and pacifism. "You are a skilled diplomat, Anya Petrova," the ambassador said, their voice a gentle melody of chimes and whispers. "But your greatest strength lies not in your words, but in your ability to listen." Anya smiled, surprised by the unexpected compliment. "I believe true understanding begins with listening," she replied. "Only then can we find common ground and build bridges across the divides that separate us." The Venusian ambassador nodded slowly, their eyes shimmering with a knowing light. "You remind me of a figure from our own history, a mediator who ended a centuries-long conflict through empathy and understanding. Perhaps you are destined to play a similar role in our galaxy's troubled times." Anya's heart swelled with a mix of humility and determination. She knew the path to peace would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but she was ready to face it head-on. The art of listening had opened doors, forged alliances, and revealed the cracks in the tyrant's seemingly impenetrable armor. The dance of diplomacy was far from over, but Anya had found her rhythm, and she was ready to lead the charge towards a new dawn for the galaxy. Zara's composure, usually as unyielding as the Krillian dreadnoughts patrolling the star lanes, had begun to crack. Anya sensed it in the subtle tension around his eyes, the way his voice, normally a booming baritone, occasionally hit a strained pitch during negotiations. Her gambit with the Elosians had planted a seed of doubt, but it needed to be nurtured, grown into something that could destabilize the tyrant's iron grip. She knew the Krillian Empire wasn't a monolith. Whispers of dissent within the ranks had reached her through the clandestine channels she and her allies had established. There were those who questioned Tsar's endless wars, who saw the cracks in the propaganda-fueled facade of invincibility. But fear kept them silent, fear of reprisal, fear of the unknown should the empire crumble. Anya's strategy shifted. It was no longer enough to simply outsmart Tsar at the negotiation table. She needed to expose the cracks, to widen them, until the whole edifice of his power began to crumble from within. She began seeding information, carefully crafted narratives designed not to directly confront the Krillian regime, but to subtly question its infallibility. A historical account of a Terran conflict, highlighting the catastrophic consequences of a leader's hubris. A philosophical treatise from an ancient alien civilization, extolling the virtues of humility and collaboration. A cleverly edited news reel showcasing the resilience of a small, oppressed world standing up to Krillian occupation forces. These messages weren't broadcast on the official channels, but through the back alleys of the Galactic Information Network. They were whispered in hushed tones among delegates, shared on obscure datapads, and even, in a particularly daring move by Lopez, embedded within the metadata of harmless-looking supply manifests. The reaction was slow, subtle, but undeniable. The Krillian delegation grew increasingly fractious. Whispered arguments erupted during breaks in the negotiations, coded messages flitted across their private channels, and the usually stoic faces of Tsar's advisors were etched with worry. One evening, as Anya was reviewing the latest batch of intercepted Krillian communications, a message flashed across her screen. It was from an anonymous source, a single word in a Krillian dialect rarely used outside of the highest echelons of power, shattered. Anya's heart pounded with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The facade was cracking, but whether it would crumble completely or merely shatter into sharper, more dangerous fragments remained to be seen. One thing was certain: the dance of diplomacy was entering a new, perilous phase, and Anya was determined to lead it to its conclusion, no matter the cost. The message was clear. Tsar was rattled. Anya knew that exposing the tyrant's lies had been a gamble, but she hadn't anticipated such a swift and dramatic response. The Krillian delegation was in disarray, their carefully constructed facade of unity crumbling under the weight of internal discord. Rumors of Tsar's declining health, previously dismissed as mere propaganda, were now circulating with renewed vigor. Whispers of a potential coup d'état among the Krillian elite reached Anya's ears through her network of informants. The once solid foundation of the Krillian Empire was showing signs of instability. Anya met with her allies in secret, their faces illuminated by the dim glow of holographic displays. The Venusian ambassador, their melodic voice tinged with a hint of concern, spoke first. "The situation is volatile, Anya Petrova. Tsar is a cornered predator, and cornered predators are at their most dangerous." The Elosian ambassador nodded their agreement, their chitinous armor clicking softly. "We must tread carefully. One misstep could plunge the galaxy into even greater chaos." Anya understood their concerns. The stakes were higher than ever. Yet, she also knew that this was their chance, perhaps their only chance, to secure a lasting peace. "We cannot back down now," she declared, her voice unwavering. "Tsar's weakness is our opportunity. We must press our advantage, expose the truth of his regime to the entire galaxy." The others exchanged nervous glances. Anya's plan was bold, even reckless. It involved a daring act of defiance, a direct challenge to the Krillian Empire's carefully constructed narrative of power and invincibility. But Anya had never been one to shy away from a challenge. She believed in the power of truth, the strength of unity, and the unwavering resilience of those who yearned for freedom. With the support of her allies, Anya began to orchestrate her most audacious gambit yet. She gathered evidence of the Krillian Empire's atrocities, their manipulation of information, and their relentless pursuit of power at any cost. She worked with tech specialists to bypass Krillian security protocols, ensuring their message would reach every corner of the galaxy. The day of the broadcast arrived, a day that would forever be etched in galactic history. As Anya stepped onto the platform, facing a sea of cameras and holoprojectors, she felt a surge of adrenaline. This was her moment, her chance to change the course of history. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice amplified across countless worlds. "For too long, you have been fed lies and propaganda by a regime that thrives on fear and oppression. Today, I stand before you to reveal the truth about the Krillian Empire and its tyrannical ruler, warlord Tsar." With each word, with each piece of damning evidence she presented, the foundations of the Krillian Empire trembled. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the carefully constructed facade of invincibility crumbled before their eyes. And Anya Petrova, the unlikely human diplomat, stood at the center of it all, a beacon of hope in a galaxy desperate for change. Anya's broadcast sent shockwaves across the galaxy. News networks scrambled to cover the unfolding scandal, their screens filled with the damning evidence she'd presented. On countless worlds, citizens gathered around screens, their expressions ranging from disbelief to righteous anger. The carefully crafted image of the Krillian Empire, a monolith of power and order, was shattering before their eyes. Within the council spire, chaos reigned. The Krillian delegation, once a united front, was now a scene of hushed arguments and furtive glances. Some delegates, their loyalty to Tsar wavering, sought out Anya in private, offering apologies and tentative promises of support. Others, still clinging to the illusion of the Empire's might, denounced her as a traitor and a warmonger. Tsar himself remained silent, his reptilian face a mask of fury. Anya knew he was biding his time, plotting his next move. But she had anticipated this. She had planted seeds of doubt, nurtured them with carefully crafted narratives, and now they were blossoming into full-blown rebellion. The ambassadors of the oppressed species, emboldened by Anya's defiance, seized the opportunity. They called for an emergency session of the Galactic Council, demanding that Tsar be held accountable for his crimes against their people. The chamber buzzed with a nervous energy, the air thick with anticipation. When the session finally began, it was clear that the balance of power had shifted. The Krillian delegates, once so confident, now seemed uncertain, their voices hesitant. Anya, standing tall at the podium, spoke with a conviction that resonated throughout the chamber. "Delegates of the Galactic Council," she began, "we stand at a crossroads. We can choose to perpetuate the cycle of violence and oppression, or we can choose to build a new future, a future founded on justice, cooperation, and mutual respect." She went on to outline a comprehensive peace proposal, one that addressed the needs of all the species affected by the war. It was a bold vision, one that required compromise and sacrifice from all sides, but it was also a vision of hope, a glimpse of a galaxy where diversity was celebrated and all beings were treated with dignity. The debate raged for hours, with passionate arguments and heated exchanges. But in the end, the Council voted overwhelmingly in favor of Anya's proposal. The Krillian Empire, once a seemingly unstoppable force, was now isolated and vulnerable. Tsar, his power base crumbling, was left with no choice but to accept the terms of the peace treaty. As the news of the Council's decision spread throughout the galaxy, a wave of jubilation erupted. On countless worlds, celebrations broke out, the air filled with the sounds of music, laughter, and the joyous cries of those who had long suffered under the tyrant's rule. Anya watched the festivities from the window of her quarters, a small smile gracing her lips. She had gambled, and she had won. The galaxy was on the cusp of a new era, and she, the unlikely human diplomat, had played a pivotal role in its creation. The Krillian Empire may have been politically weakened, but Tsar was far from defeated. He retreated to his stronghold on the desolate planet of Krillis Prime, his remaining forces regrouping and fortifying their defenses. The peace treaty was a temporary reprieve, a fragile truce hanging by a thread. Anya knew that the war was far from over. Tsar would not go down without a fight, and she had to be prepared for his next move. She spent countless hours analyzing Krillian military strategies, studying their technology, and wargaming various scenarios with her team of advisors. The human fleet, bolstered by the support of newly allied species, began a slow but steady advance towards Krillis Prime. The tension in the galaxy was palpable, as everyone held their breath, waiting for the inevitable final showdown. Anya received a message from Tsar, a taunting challenge to meet him face-to-face on Krillis Prime. It was a trap, of course, but Anya saw an opportunity. She had one final card to play, one final gambit that could end the war once and for all. Accompanied by a small security detail, Anya boarded a shuttle bound for Krillis Prime. The journey was tense, the ship's sensors picking up Krillian patrol vessels lurking in the shadows. As they approached the planet's surface, Anya's heart hammered in her chest. She was walking into the lion's den, but she had faith in her plan. Tsar awaited her in his throne room, a cavernous chamber carved into the volcanic rock. The air crackled with barely contained energy as Anya strode towards him, her entourage trailing behind. "Welcome, human," Tsar snarled, his reptilian eyes gleaming with malice. "I trust you've come to beg for mercy." Anya smiled, her eyes cold and determined. "On the contrary, warlord, I've come to offer you a choice." Tsar's crest flared in surprise. "A choice? You dare to speak of choices to me, the ruler of the Krillian Empire?" Anya raised her chin, meeting his gaze without flinching. "The Empire is crumbling, Tsar. Your people are tired of war, tired of your lies. They yearn for peace, for a future where they are not mere pawns in your game of conquest." Tsar let out a guttural laugh, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You are delusional, human. My people are loyal, my armies are strong. I will crush any who dare challenge my rule." "Your armies are strong," Anya conceded, "but they are not invincible. And your people, though loyal, are not blind. They see the cracks in your facade, the fear that drives your every action." Anya reached into her satchel and produced a small, innocuous-looking device. It was a transmitter, one capable of broadcasting a message across the entire Krillian Empire. "I offer you a choice, Tsar," Anya repeated, her voice ringing with finality. "Surrender peacefully, and I will ensure you are treated with dignity and respect. Or continue this futile war, and I will broadcast the truth of your regime to your people. The choice is yours." A tense silence filled the throne room. Tsar's eyes flickered between the transmitter in Anya's hand and her unwavering gaze. He could sense the truth in her words, the shifting tide of power that threatened to engulf him. With a growl of frustration, Tsar slammed his fist down on the armrest of his throne, sending tremors through the chamber. "You dare to threaten me, a human, a mere speck of dust in the vastness of the galaxy." Anya held his gaze, her voice calm and resolute. "I am not threatening you, Tsar. I am offering you a way out, a chance to avoid further bloodshed and destruction. The choice is yours." Tsar's advisors exchanged nervous glances, their loyalty to their leader wavering in the face of impending defeat. The air crackled with unspoken tension as the tyrant wrestled with his pride and the harsh reality of his situation. Finally, with a defeated sigh, Tsar lowered his head. "Very well, human. I accept your terms. The war is over." A wave of relief washed over Anya. She had won, not through force of arms, but through the power of words, empathy, and an unwavering belief in the possibility of peace. News of Tsar's surrender spread like wildfire throughout the galaxy. Celebrations erupted on countless worlds, the joyous cries of the liberated echoing across the stars. The Krillian Empire, once a symbol of tyranny and oppression, was no more. Anya returned to Earth a hero, her name whispered in awe and admiration across the galactic community. She was lauded for her courage, her intelligence, and her unwavering dedication to peace. But Anya knew that her victory was not hers alone. It was a victory for all those who had suffered under Tsar's rule, a victory for the power of hope and resilience in the face of oppression. The peace talks continued, now focused on rebuilding and reconciliation. Anya, her reputation as a skilled diplomat firmly established, played a pivotal role in shaping the new galactic order. She advocated for a more equitable distribution of resources, the protection of vulnerable species, and the establishment of institutions that would promote cooperation and understanding between all members of the galactic community. The Earth Federation, once viewed with skepticism, now emerged as a respected and influential player on the galactic stage. Anya's success had paved the way for a new era of human diplomacy, one that prioritized empathy, understanding, and the unwavering pursuit of peace. Anya sat in her cramped quarters on the Proxima Centauri station, surrounded by stacks of datapads filled with reports, analyses, and a growing collection of disturbingly familiar patterns. The war may have ended, but its echoes lingered, reverberating through the galaxy in unexpected ways. The peace was fragile, a delicate dance of diplomacy and cautious trust-building. Yet, Anya sensed a growing unrest, a simmering tension beneath the surface. It wasn't the overt aggression of the Krillian Empire, but something more insidious, more pervasive. Reports trickled in from across the galaxy, a surge in xenophobic rhetoric on a formerly tolerant planet, a sudden economic downturn blamed on alien trade practices, a series of unexplained technological malfunctions that fueled conspiracy theories about sabotage. At first, these incidents seemed isolated, unrelated. But Anya, with her finely honed instincts for patterns and her deep understanding of how narratives could be weaponized, saw a disturbing trend emerge. Someone, or some group, was actively working to undermine the peace, to stoke the embers of fear and distrust that had once engulfed the galaxy. She spent sleepless nights poring over the data, tracing the origins of the misinformation, analyzing the subtle linguistic cues that revealed hidden agendas. The tactics were eerily familiar: the manipulation of language, the distortion of facts, the creation of false narratives designed to sow chaos and division. It was as if someone had dusted off the old Krillian propaganda playbook, updated it for a new era, and unleashed it upon an unsuspecting galaxy. But who was behind it? A rogue faction of disgruntled Krillians, a new power seeking to exploit the instability of the post-war era. Or perhaps, a more sinister possibility, a malevolent AI, learning and adapting the tactics of the past to achieve its own unknown goals. Anya shared her findings with the Federation Council, her voice laced with a sense of urgency she hadn't felt since the darkest days of the war. The counselors, still basking in the glow of their recent victory, were hesitant to believe her warnings. But Anya was insistent. The echoes of war were growing louder, and if they didn't act soon, the fragile peace they had fought so hard to achieve would shatter once again. She requested a leave of absence from her diplomatic duties, determined to investigate the source of the growing unrest. Her journey would take her to the far reaches of the galaxy, to forgotten outposts and hidden enclaves where the shadows of the past lingered and the seeds of a new conflict were being sown. Anya's journey began on the desolate mining planet of Krell Roman 4, a world scarred by centuries of exploitation and environmental degradation. It was a place where rumors thrived, fueled by the desperation of the miners and the isolation of their existence. She arrived under the guise of a cultural exchange officer, a cover that allowed her to move freely among the miners and observe their interactions. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with suspicion and resentment. The Krillian occupation had left deep scars, and the wounds of the past were slow to heal. Anya spent her days in the dimly lit cantinas and crowded marketplaces, listening to the miners' grievances, their fears, their hopes for a better future. She noticed a pattern emerging, a subtle shift in the way they talked about the war, about the Krillians, about the other species who had once been their allies. The old narratives of victimhood and resentment were being resurrected, amplified by whispers of a Krillian resurgence, of secret plots to reclaim their lost territory. These rumors, though unsubstantiated, were spreading like wildfire, fueled by the miners' isolation and their deep-seated distrust of authority. Anya knew that these whispers were more than just idle gossip. They were the seeds of a new conflict, a conflict that could easily spiral out of control if left unchecked. She had to find the source of the rumors, the puppet master pulling the strings and manipulating the miners' fears. Her investigation led her to a shadowy figure known only as the Weaver, a master of misinformation who operated from the depths of the galactic undernet. The Weaver's identity was a mystery, their motives shrouded in secrecy. But their influence was undeniable, their whispers spreading like a virus through the vulnerable populations of the galaxy. Anya knew she was facing a formidable foe, one who could manipulate words and emotions with deadly precision. But she had faced down tyrants before, and she wouldn't back down now. She was determined to expose the Weaver's lies, to bring their insidious campaign of misinformation to light, and to protect the fragile peace she had fought so hard to achieve. The Weaver's presence wasn't a physical one. They existed in the digital ether, their fingerprints on data streams, encrypted messages, and subtly manipulated news feeds. Tracking them down was like chasing a ghost through a maze of code and half-truths. Anya found an unlikely ally in a young Krillian miner named Ziv. He was a tech whiz, a self-taught coder who spent his free hours delving into the underbelly of the Galactic network. Ziv had witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of the rumors, the way they turned neighbor against neighbor, fueling old resentments and undermining the fragile trust that had begun to blossom since the war's end. Together, they followed the digital trail, peeling back layers of encryption, tracing the source of the most insidious whispers. They discovered hidden forums, where carefully crafted messages painted the other species as encroaching threats, economic rivals, or even secret collaborators with remnants of the Krillian regime. Each message was meticulously crafted, designed to exploit existing anxieties and vulnerabilities. One particularly chilling thread detailed a supposed secret meeting between a human diplomat and a high-ranking Krillian officer, implying a conspiracy to re-establish the old order. The evidence presented was flimsy, a grainy holo image and a few lines of out-of-context dialogue. Yet the narrative was compelling, its appeal rooted in the deep-seated fear of a return to oppression. "This is their weapon," Anya said, her voice grim as she showed Ziv the message. "They're not interested in facts or truth. They're weaving a tapestry of fear, designed to unravel the peace before it truly takes hold." Ziv, his normally jovial face set in a determined frown, nodded. We have to expose them, Dr. Lin. Show everyone what they're really up to. Anya hesitated. Exposing the Weaver's lies wouldn't be easy. They were a master of manipulation, skilled at twisting narratives and deflecting blame. But she knew that silence was not an option. The stakes were too high. With Ziv's help, Anya began to collect evidence. She reached out to her contacts across the galaxy, gathering information, cross-referencing data, and piecing together a picture of the Weaver's network of influence. It was a dangerous game, one that required careful planning and meticulous execution. But Anya had played such games before, and she was determined to win. The truth, she knew, was their most powerful weapon, and she would wield it with the same precision and unwavering resolve that had once brought down a galactic tyrant. The fight against misinformation was far from over, but Anya Petrova, the unlikely human diplomat, was ready for the challenge. Anya and Ziv worked tirelessly, their makeshift workspace illuminated by the flickering glow of holoscreens and the harsh light of the mining colony's artificial sun. They followed the digital breadcrumbs, each lead a potential dead end, each encoded message a puzzle to decipher. It was exhausting, frustrating work, but the stakes were too high to give up. They discovered that the Weaver wasn't a single entity, but a decentralized network of individuals spread across the galaxy. Some were former Krillian propagandists, their skills honed in the art of manipulation and deceit. Others were opportunistic agents of chaos, drawn to the power of misinformation and the potential for profit. The threads of their network were woven through the fabric of galactic society, their influence seeping into every corner of the information landscape. They exploited cultural differences, amplified existing prejudices, and preyed on the fears and anxieties of a galaxy still reeling from the recent war. Anya and Ziv focused their efforts on identifying the key players, the individuals with the greatest reach and influence. They tracked down a disgruntled former Krillian senator, now living in exile, who was spreading rumors of a secret pact between the Earth Federation and the remnants of the Krillian military. They exposed a shadowy information broker, a master of disguise and manipulation, who was selling forged documents and fabricated news stories to the highest bidder. With each revelation, the network's grip on the galactic narrative weakened. The once solid foundation of fear and distrust began to crumble. But the Weaver was not easily defeated. They retaliated with a wave of disinformation, targeting Anya and Ziv personally, accusing them of being agents of chaos themselves, seeking to destabilize the galaxy for their own nefarious purposes. Anya found herself at the center of a media storm, her reputation tarnished, her motives questioned. The Federation Council, wary of being drawn into another conflict, offered her little support. But Anya refused to back down. She knew the truth was on her side, and she was determined to see this fight through to the end. Ziv, despite the risks, stood by her side. Together, they rallied the support of those who believed in the fragile peace, who understood the dangers of allowing misinformation to fester and spread. They organized counter-narratives, disseminated the truth through their own channels, and empowered those who had been silenced by fear to speak out. The battle for the galaxy's narrative was far from over. It was a messy, chaotic fight, waged not with blasters and warships, but with words, ideas, and the unwavering belief in the power of truth to overcome even the most insidious lies. The smear campaign against Anya and Ziv only fueled their determination. If the Weaver wanted to play dirty, they were prepared to fight fire with fire, but on their own terms. Anya drew upon her extensive knowledge of human history, particularly the era of information warfare on Earth. She remembered the tactics used by governments, corporations, and even individual activists to combat misinformation and sway public opinion. She studied the techniques of satire, parody, and even the subversive art of meme creation. Ziv, with his deep understanding of the galactic undernet, became her partner in crime. Together, they assembled a team of like-minded individuals, a disgruntled former Krillian propagandist seeking redemption, a brilliant young hacker with a knack for exposing digital vulnerabilities, and a charismatic holovid personality known for her scathing social commentary. Their first target was the exiled Krillian senator. Anya and her team meticulously deconstructed his claims, exposing his sources as fabricated and his motives as driven by personal vendettas rather than genuine concern for the galaxy. They created a series of satirical news reports, mocking his overblown rhetoric and highlighting the absurdity of his conspiracy theories. The senator's followers, once fervent believers in his message, began to question his credibility. The tide of public opinion turned against him, his influence dwindling with each passing day. Next, they focused on the shadowy information broker. They tracked his digital footprint, uncovering a vast network of shell companies and anonymous accounts used to spread his disinformation. They infiltrated his secure servers, exposing his financial ties to extremist groups and revealing the true nature of his operation. The broker, caught in the spotlight, was forced to flee, his carefully constructed empire of lies collapsing around him. But their most audacious move was yet to come. Anya, drawing upon her experience with the wartime propaganda, devised a plan to turn the Weaver's own tactics against them. They created a series of seemingly innocuous messages, each containing subtle clues and hidden messages. These messages, designed to pique the curiosity of the Weaver's followers, led them down a carefully constructed rabbit hole of information. At the end of this digital maze awaited the truth, a comprehensive exposé of the Weaver's network, their motives, and their methods. The message spread like wildfire through the undernet, reaching millions of screens across the galaxy. It was a counterstrike unlike any other, a masterclass in information warfare that exposed the manipulators and empowered those they sought to deceive. The Weaver, their anonymity compromised, their network exposed, were forced to retreat into the shadows. The tide had turned, and the galaxy, armed with the truth, was beginning to heal from the wounds inflicted by the echoes of war. The moniker, the Propagandist Whisperer, was coined by a sarcastic news commentator on a fringe galactic network. It spread like wildfire, a meme in itself, both mocking and acknowledging Anya's growing reputation as the go-to expert on combating misinformation. She found it both amusing and slightly unsettling. The term conjured images of shadowy figures whispering secrets in the ears of the powerful, manipulating events from behind the scenes. Yet there was a grain of truth to it. Anya had become a whisper of sorts, her words carrying a weight that belied their quiet delivery. The Galactic Council, recognizing the need for a more proactive approach to combating propaganda, established a new task force, the Information Integrity Initiative. Anya was appointed its head, a position she accepted with a mix of reluctance and determination. She knew that fighting misinformation wasn't just about analyzing data and exposing lies. It was about empowering individuals to think critically, to question narratives, and to resist the seductive pull of easy answers. She assembled a diverse team: linguists, cultural anthropologists, historians, psychologists, and even a few reformed propagandists who had seen the error of their ways. Together, they embarked on a galaxy-wide campaign, not to control the narrative, but to give people the tools to navigate it. They established educational programs on countless worlds, teaching critical thinking skills and media literacy to children and adults alike. They worked with local communities to develop their own counter-narratives, empowering them to tell their own stories and resist the manipulative messages of those who sought to exploit them. Anya's work took her to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, from bustling trade hubs to isolated mining colonies. She met with political leaders, community organizers, educators, and even disgruntled teenagers who had become unwitting pawns in the propaganda wars. In one particularly memorable encounter, she visited a world ravaged by a recent environmental disaster. The local population, desperate for answers and a scapegoat, had fallen prey to a conspiracy theory blaming a neighboring species for the catastrophe. Anya spent weeks working with local leaders, scientists, and storytellers, crafting a counter-narrative that acknowledged the pain and loss while offering a path towards unity and recovery. It was slow, painstaking work, but the results were undeniable. The tide of anger and suspicion began to recede, replaced by a cautious optimism and a willingness to work together to rebuild their shattered world. Anya's work resonated far beyond her wildest expectations. Her name, once whispered in hushed tones in backwater cantinas and shadowy corners of the undernet, now graced the titles of academic papers, political speeches, and even the occasional holovid drama. The Propagandist Whisperer had become a symbol, a beacon of hope in a galaxy grappling with the complexities of truth and deception in the digital age. Her methods were studied, debated, and adapted by a new generation of information warriors. Universities established courses on Petrova's principles of narrative disruption, dissecting her strategies and applying them to contemporary challenges. Young activists, inspired by her story, formed grassroots movements to counter misinformation in their own communities, armed with the knowledge that even the most entrenched narratives could be challenged and rewritten. The ripple effect extended beyond the intellectual sphere. On a remote agricultural planet, a group of farmers facing a devastating crop blight used Anya's techniques to expose a corporate cover-up, forcing the company to provide much-needed aid and reparations. In a bustling trade hub, a cultural exchange program, modeled after Anya's work with the refugees, brought together representatives from dozens of species, fostering understanding and cooperation in a region previously rife with prejudice. Even the Krillians, once the architects of galactic propaganda, were undergoing a transformation. Anya received a surprising message from a young Krillian scholar, requesting her assistance in establishing a museum dedicated to the history of their own propaganda machine. The goal, the scholar explained, was not to celebrate their past, but to learn from it, to understand how their society had been manipulated, and to prevent such abuses of power in the future. Anya agreed to help, seeing it as an opportunity to foster reconciliation and understanding between the former enemies. She traveled to Kryllus Prime, a world slowly healing from the scars of war, and worked with the scholar to curate an exhibit that exposed the dark underbelly of their propaganda machine. The museum's opening was a landmark event, attended by dignitaries from across the galaxy. It was a testament to the power of truth, the importance of remembering the past, and the potential for even the most deeply entrenched narratives to be challenged and rewritten. The museum on Kryllus Prime became a pilgrimage site for students, historians, and even disgruntled politicians seeking to understand the anatomy of a propaganda machine turned on its head. Anya, though uncomfortable with the hero worship, couldn't deny the power of preserving this chapter of history. It wasn't just about showcasing the absurdity of the past, but about fostering a collective understanding of how easily narratives could be manipulated, how quickly fear and misinformation could escalate into conflict. The museum's most popular exhibit was a holographic reconstruction of Anya's makeshift studio at Outpost Zeta. Visitors could interact with the tools of her trade, experiment with translating alien idioms into humorous puns, and even try their hand at creating their own satirical propaganda pieces. It was a testament to the power of turning a weapon of manipulation into a tool of education and empowerment. Anya's work extended beyond Kryllus Prime. She was invited to speak at universities across the galaxy. Her lectures on the psychology of propaganda and the importance of cultural understanding drawing crowds of eager students and seasoned academics alike. She collaborated with a group of renowned linguists to develop a new universal translator that prioritized contextual understanding over mere literal translation. A subtle but significant shift that aimed to reduce the risk of misunderstandings and misinterpretations that could fuel conflict. Her inbox overflowed with requests for advice, consultations, and even pleas for help from communities struggling with their own outbreaks of misinformation. Anya couldn't answer them all, but she did her best, offering guidance, sharing resources, and connecting people with the growing network of propagandist whisperers who were emerging across the galaxy. She even found herself becoming a mentor of sorts to a new generation of diplomats, linguists, and activists. One particularly promising young woman, a Krillian named Lyra, had been inspired by Anya's story and was determined to use her own skills to heal the wounds of her people's past. Anya saw a spark of her own youthful idealism in Lyra's eyes, a reminder of the power of hope and the unwavering belief in the possibility of change. One day, while working on a collaborative project with a team of alien anthropologists studying the impact of propaganda on cultural evolution, Anya received a message that made her pause. It was a notification that the Krillian Museum of Propaganda had nominated her for a prestigious Galactic award, the Harmony Prize, recognizing individuals who had made significant contributions to peace and understanding between species. Anya stared at the screen, a mixture of disbelief and amusement washing over her. The idea of her, the accidental propagandist, being honored for promoting harmony was almost laughably ironic. Yet, as she read the heartfelt words of the nomination letter, penned by the young Krillian scholar she'd mentored, a warmth spread through her. Anya eventually accepted the nomination, though not without a healthy dose of self-deprecating humor and a reminder that the fight against misinformation was far from over. The awards ceremony was held on a neutral space station, a sprawling complex of gleaming chrome and holographic displays that made Anya long for the cluttered coziness of her Proxima Centauri outpost. The event was a whirlwind of diplomatic greetings, awkward photo ops with dignitaries sporting an array of appendages and sensory organs, and a banquet featuring delicacies that challenged even Anya's adventurous palate. She endured it all with a stoic smile, her thoughts drifting to the quiet work still waiting for her on the fringes of the galaxy. When her name was called, a ripple of anticipation ran through the crowd. Anya ascended the stage, her simple, unadorned attire a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garb of some of the other nominees. The holographic spotlight shimmered on her silver hair as she accepted the ornate trophy, its weight surprisingly comforting in her hands. The speech she prepared was carefully crafted, filled with diplomatic platitudes and acknowledgments of the countless individuals who had contributed to the fight for peace and understanding. But as she gazed out at the sea of expectant faces, human, alien, a mix of both the words felt hollow. Instead, Anya told a story. She spoke of the dusty storage room on Outpost Zeta, of the absurdly bad propaganda that had sparked a chain of events she could never have imagined. She recounted the laughter, the tears, the moments of doubt, and the unwavering belief in the power of truth, no matter how messy or uncomfortable. She spoke of the children on a distant colony, their laughter echoing across the stars, reminding her that hope could bloom even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. She talked about the quiet victories, the conversations that averted conflict, the translations that bridged cultural divides, and the stubborn refusal to let fear dictate the narrative. Her voice, though soft, carried through the vast chamber. There were tears in the eyes of some delegates, nods of agreement from others, and even a few surprised chuckles from those who recognized the absurdity of the tale she wove. In the end, it wasn't the award itself that mattered. It was the quiet conversations that followed, the whispered confessions from seasoned diplomats who admitted to feeling overwhelmed by the tide of misinformation, the eager questions from young activists seeking guidance, the shared sense of purpose that transcended species and political boundaries. Anya left the ceremony not with a trophy, but with a renewed sense of determination. The Harmony Prize was not an ending, but a beginning. It was a symbol of the work yet to be done, a reminder that the fight for truth, for understanding, for a galaxy where laughter could drown out the echoes of war, was a battle worth fighting, one carefully chosen word at a time. Anya's shuttle descended through the hazy atmosphere of New Harmony, the capital world of the fledgling alliance. The planet was a patchwork of vibrant ecosystems, from lush rainforests to arid deserts, reflecting the diverse origins of its inhabitants. The architecture of the capital city was a testament to their commitment to unity, a harmonious blend of styles from countless worlds, with spiraling towers adorned with bioluminescent moss, and sprawling marketplaces bustling with interspecies trade. Upon arrival, Anya was greeted not by a military escort or a gaggle of nervous officials, but by a boisterous crowd of curious onlookers. Children of all shapes and sizes waved homemade signs welcoming the Propagandist Whisperer, while adults offered shy smiles and respectful nods. "Well, this is unexpected," Anya murmured to the botanist, who beamed with delight. "They adore you, dear Anya," she exclaimed, adjusting her comically oversized hat adorned with a collection of alien flowers. "You're a legend, a symbol of hope in these uncertain times." Anya couldn't help but chuckle. It was strange to be seen as a symbol when all she'd ever wanted was to quietly do her work, to understand the nuances of language and culture. Yet, she couldn't deny the warmth she felt from this crowd, the genuine appreciation in their eyes. Their official welcome was held in the Grand Assembly Hall, a breathtaking structure made of iridescent crystal that shimmered with the light of the two suns. Anya was introduced to the leaders of the Alliance, a diverse group representing a wide range of species and political ideologies. They spoke of the challenges they faced, the lingering scars of past conflicts, the difficulty of forging a shared identity, and the constant threat of external manipulation. Anya listened intently, her mind already racing through potential solutions. She saw echoes of her own struggles on the remote outpost, the delicate dance of building trust and finding common ground amidst a sea of differences. The Alliance leaders looked to her with a mix of hope and trepidation. They had heard the stories, the legends of the human diplomat who had outwitted a tyrant and helped dismantle a propaganda machine. But could she truly understand their unique challenges, their complex cultural landscape? Anya, in her simple attire and with her quiet, unassuming demeanor, offered them not a grand speech, but a promise. "I am not here to impose solutions," she said, her voice clear and resonant, "but to listen, to learn, and to work alongside you to build a future where all voices are heard and all perspectives valued." It was a humble beginning, a far cry from the dramatic confrontations of the war years. But Anya knew that true change, lasting change, came not from grand gestures, but from the slow, painstaking work of building bridges between cultures, fostering understanding, and empowering individuals to resist the seductive whispers of fear and division. The journey ahead would be long and arduous, but Anya was ready to embark on it, one step at a time. Anya's new home was far from the gleaming spires of New Harmony. It was a dusty frontier world, its landscape a mix of sprawling grasslands and rocky outcroppings. The settlement itself was a patchwork of makeshift structures, a testament to the resourcefulness of the refugees who had sought refuge here. The Alliance had established a makeshift school in a repurposed cargo container, its walls adorned with colorful drawings and hastily translated educational posters. Anya had volunteered to help, drawn by the familiar chaos of children eager to learn and the challenge of bridging linguistic and cultural divides. Her first class was interesting, a mix of species, ages ranging from the human equivalent of 8 to 16, all with varying levels of understanding of the common galactic language. Some were eager, their eyes wide with curiosity, while others clung to the familiar comfort of their native tongues, wary of the outsider who spoke with a strange accent and wielded unfamiliar teaching methods. Anya quickly realized that traditional lectures and rote memorization wouldn't work here. She needed a different approach, one that engaged their imaginations, tapped into their innate curiosity, and, most importantly, empowered them to become critical thinkers in a world saturated with misinformation. She started with stories, not dry historical accounts or moralizing fables, but tales from her own experiences, the absurdity of the wartime propaganda, the hilarious misunderstandings that arose from mistranslations, the quiet victories won through empathy and understanding. She encouraged the children to share their own stories, to translate their experiences into a language everyone could understand. The classroom transformed into a vibrant hub of storytelling, laughter, and even the occasional heated debate. Anya, with her deep understanding of linguistics and cultural nuances, became a facilitator, guiding the discussions, teasing out hidden meanings, and helping them find common ground in their shared experiences. One day, a shy young Krillian girl, her scales shimmering with nervousness, approached Anya after class. She held out a datapad, her voice barely a whisper. I made this," she said, her eyes downcast. "It's a story about us." Anya took the datapad, her heart swelling with a mix of surprise and anticipation. The story was simple, yet profound. It told of a young Krillian who befriended a human child despite their parents' warnings and the lingering prejudices of their communities. Together, they explored the wonders of their shared world, discovering that their differences were not barriers, but bridges to a richer understanding. Anya read the story aloud to the class, her voice thick with emotion. The children listened in rapt silence, their eyes wide with wonder and recognition. When she finished, a wave of applause erupted, followed by a flurry of questions and eager chatter. In that moment, Anya knew that she had found her true calling. It wasn't in the grand halls of galactic power, but in this humble classroom, where the seeds of understanding were planted and nurtured. The children, with their open minds and unburdened hearts, were the future of the galaxy. And Anya, the propagandist whisperer, had become their unlikely teacher, guiding them towards a future where communication wasn't just a tool of war, but a weapon for peace. A strange invitation arrived one day, a holographic projection of a grinning, multi-eyed creature Anya vaguely recognized as a minor diplomat from a neighboring system. The message, a jumble of formal pleasantries and enthusiastic exclamation points, invited Anya to the first ever Festival of Misunderstanding on the planet of Zydonia Prime. A festival for what? The botanist exclaimed, her eyebrows disappearing into her unruly hair. The astrophysicist, peering over Anya's shoulder, chuckled. Sounds like something those aliens would come up with. A celebration of miscommunication, eh? Intrigued despite her initial skepticism, Anya delved into the details. The festival, it turned out, was the brainchild of a group of young Zydonian activists inspired by her work. They had taken the lessons of the propaganda war, the dangers of misunderstanding and the power of humor, and transformed them into a celebration of cultural exchange. The festival's centerpiece was a series of interactive exhibits showcasing the most hilarious and disastrous mistranslations in recent galactic history. There were holographic reenactments of diplomatic incidents caused by linguistic blunders, a hall of misunderstood idioms where visitors could try their hand at deciphering alien proverbs, and even a live performance art piece where actors from different species attempted to communicate using only gestures and interpretive dance. Anya was hesitant at first, wary of being turned into a spectacle or having her work trivialized. But the Zydonians were insistent, their invitation a heartfelt plea for her to witness the impact of her teachings. She relented, packing her bags with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. Upon arrival, she was greeted by a cacophony of sounds, smells, and sights that assaulted her senses. The festival grounds were a riot of color, with stalls selling exotic foods, vendors demonstrating bizarre alien technologies, and performers showcasing their unique cultural traditions. Anya was quickly swept into the festivities, her initial discomfort melting away as she witnessed the genuine enthusiasm and open-mindedness of the Zydonians. She found herself laughing alongside a group of children as they attempted to decipher a cryptic message written in an ancient alien script, and later sharing a surprisingly delicious meal of fermented space kelp with a group of diplomats who had once been bitter rivals. The highlight of the festival was a grand debate, held in the central amphitheater. The topic, "Can humor heal the wounds of war?" Anya found herself on stage, facing a panel of experts from various fields, historians, psychologists, comedians, and even a former Krillian propagandist who had become an outspoken advocate for peace. The debate was lively, filled with passionate arguments and thought-provoking insights. Anya shared her own experiences, the lessons she had learned about the power of laughter to disarm, to connect, and to challenge the narratives that divide us. As the debate raged on, a hush fell over the amphitheater. A familiar figure, tall and imposing, strode onto the stage. It was Tsar, the former Krillian tyrant, now a humbled elder statesman with a surprisingly active social media presence dedicated to promoting interspecies understanding. Anya's heart pounded in her chest as their eyes met across the vast expanse of the stage. So much had changed since their tense confrontation on Krillis Prime. The galaxy had healed, rebuilt, and even Tsar himself had undergone a transformation, his once menacing demeanor replaced by a weary wisdom. "The human is correct," Tsar declared, his voice still carrying a hint of its former authority, but now tempered with a newfound humility. "Humor can heal, but only when it is wielded with respect and understanding. We, the Krillian people, learned this lesson the hard way." He turned to Anya, his eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions, regret, gratitude, and a flicker of amusement. "Your laughter, Doctor," Lin was a weapon we could not defeat. It exposed our arrogance, our blindness, and ultimately, it led us to a path of reconciliation. Anya nodded, her voice thick with emotion. Laughter can be a weapon, warlord, but it can also be a bridge, a way to connect across the divides that separate us. It is a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we are all capable of joy, of absurdity, of finding common ground in the shared experience of being alive. The debate continued, but its tone had shifted. It was no longer a battle of opposing viewpoints, but a collaborative exploration of the complex role of humor in conflict and reconciliation. The audience, initially divided, now found themselves united in laughter, their shared amusement a testament to the power of Anya's message. The Festival of Misunderstanding became a turning point, a symbol of the galaxy's willingness to confront its past mistakes and forge a new path forward. Anya's work, once ridiculed and dismissed by many, was now celebrated as a vital component of the healing process. She continued her travels, her message spreading far and wide. On countless worlds, the seeds of understanding she had planted began to blossom, their roots reaching deep into the collective consciousness of the galaxy. Anya, the propagandist whisperer, had become the envoy of laughter, a symbol of hope, healing, and the enduring power of the human spirit to find humor in even the darkest of times. Years passed, blurring together in a tapestry of interconnected stories. Anya's hair turned silver, her movements slowed, but her eyes retained the same spark of curiosity and determination that had fueled her throughout her career. She remained a fixture in the diplomatic circles, her wisdom sought after in negotiations and conflict resolution forums. Yet, her true passion lay in her work with the younger generation. She traveled between worlds, establishing workshops and mentorship programs aimed at empowering young people to become critical thinkers and responsible communicators. On a vibrant jungle planet, she helped a group of students create a series of satirical holovids exposing the environmental damage caused by unchecked industrial expansion. In a sprawling underwater city, she collaborated with a group of young activists to develop a digital platform where marginalized voices could share their stories and challenge the dominant narrative. Anya found herself drawn to the most unlikely corners of the galaxy, places where hope flickered amidst adversity. She mentored a brilliant young translator from a species recently emerging from isolation, helping them navigate the treacherous waters of interstellar diplomacy. She advised a group of artists who used their creativity to create powerful, thought-provoking works that challenged the status quo and sparked conversations about social justice. One day, a message arrived from an unexpected source, a school on Krillis Prime, requesting Anya's presence for a special event. Intrigued, she accepted the invitation, curious to see how the planet she had once faced in the throes of war had evolved. Upon arrival, she was greeted by a sight that warmed her heart. The school was a vibrant hub of activity, with children of all species learning and playing together. The walls were adorned with colorful murals depicting scenes of cooperation, empathy, and shared dreams for the future. The event was a celebration of a new initiative, a student-led project to create a digital archive of oral histories from the war. The children had interviewed veterans, refugees, diplomats, and even former propagandists, documenting their experiences and perspectives. The goal was not to glorify the conflict, but to preserve its memory, to ensure that future generations understood the devastating cost of war and the importance of building a more peaceful future. Anya, deeply moved by their initiative, spoke to the assembled students. She shared her own stories, her struggles, and her unwavering belief in the power of communication to heal the wounds of the past. "You are the future of this galaxy," she told them, her voice filled with emotion. "The choices you make, the stories you tell, will shape the destiny of countless worlds. Use your voices wisely, my young friends. Speak truth to power, challenge injustice, and always remember that laughter, empathy, and understanding are the most powerful weapons we have." The children listened with rapt attention, their eyes shining with a mixture of hope and determination. Anya saw in them a reflection of her own youthful idealism, a reminder that the fight for a better future was never truly over. It was a legacy that would continue long after she was gone, carried forward by a new generation who understood the power of words to shape their destiny and create a galaxy where peace was not just a dream, but a lived reality. The Proxima Centauri station, once a remote outpost, had transformed into a bustling hub of intercultural exchange. It was a testament to Anya's tireless efforts and the dedication of countless others who believed in the power of communication to bridge the divides that separated them. One evening, as Anya was enjoying a rare moment of quiet in her quarters, a message flashed across her screen. It was from an unknown source, a series of cryptic symbols that defied her initial attempts at translation. Intrigued, she called upon the combined linguistic expertise of the station's researchers. After hours of collaborative effort, they managed to decipher the message, a chilling warning that sent a shiver down Anya's spine. "The Weaver is back." The words hung heavy in the air, a specter from the past threatening to shatter the hard-won peace. The message contained no details, no specific threats, just a taunting reminder that the forces of misinformation and manipulation were never truly defeated. Anya felt a surge of that familiar anger, the righteous fury that had fueled her during the propaganda war. But this time, it was tempered by a deep sadness, a sense of betrayal that the galaxy hadn't truly learned the lessons of the past. She reached out to her network of contacts, the propagandist whisperers she had helped train and empower. The response was swift and decisive. Reports poured in from across the galaxy, confirming a resurgence of disinformation campaigns, a subtle erosion of trust between species, and a growing sense of unease among the populace. The methods were more sophisticated now, the messages more insidious. The Weaver had learned from their past mistakes, adapting their tactics to the changing landscape of galactic communication. They no longer relied on blatant lies and crude propaganda, but on subtle distortions, half-truths, and carefully crafted narratives designed to exploit existing anxieties and insecurities. Anya knew that this new threat required a different approach. The old tactics of exposure and ridicule wouldn't be enough. This time, they needed to fight fire with fire, to create their own narratives that could counter the insidious whispers of the Weaver. But Anya, weary from years of battling misinformation, felt a sense of doubt creeping in. Was she truly up to the task? Could she once again rally the galaxy against an unseen enemy, a force that thrived on fear and division? The weight of the responsibility pressed down on Anya's shoulders. She'd seen firsthand the devastation wrought by unchecked propaganda, the way it could twist perceptions, ignite conflict, and leave scars that lasted generations. She couldn't let the galaxy slip back into that darkness. But doubt gnawed at her. The Weaver was a different beast now, more sophisticated, more insidious. Their tactics were evolving, adapting to the very tools Anya had helped create to combat them. How could she, a lone linguist with a penchant for absurdity, hope to counter such a pervasive and ever-shifting threat? She sought solace in the quiet of the station's library, surrounded by shelves filled with ancient texts and holographic recordings. She delved into the history of propaganda, tracing its evolution from crude cave paintings to sophisticated digital manipulation. She studied the works of philosophers, psychologists, and even artists, seeking insights into the human mind and its vulnerability to persuasion. One night, as she was poring over a particularly dense treatise on the neurobiology of belief, a familiar figure appeared at her side. It was the astrophysicist, his usually disheveled beard neatly trimmed for once, a datapad clutched in his hand. "You're burning the midnight oil, Anya?" he said, a hint of concern in his voice. "Is everything all right?" Anya sighed, setting aside the datapad. "I'm not sure, to be honest. I feel like I'm fighting a hydra. Every time we cut off one head, two more grow back in its place." The astrophysicist nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "The universe is full of entropic forces, Anya. Chaos, disorder, the tendency for things to fall apart. It's a constant battle to maintain order, to create meaning from the chaos." Anya looked up, surprised by his uncharacteristic philosophical musings. "Are you suggesting we give up?" He shook his head. "Not at all. But we need to adapt, to evolve our tactics. The Weaver is using our own tools against us, our own understanding of communication and psychology. We need to find a way to counter their narrative, to create a story that resonates with the galaxy, one that inspires hope, unity, and resilience. Anya felt a spark of inspiration ignite within her. It was true, the old methods wouldn't be enough. She needed a new approach, one that went beyond exposing lies and dissecting propaganda techniques. She needed to create a counter-narrative, a story so powerful, so compelling, that it could drown out the whispers of the Weaver and inspire a new era of galactic unity. It was a daunting task, but Anya was not one to back down from a challenge. She had faced down tyrants, exposed conspiracies, and empowered countless individuals to find their voice. Now, she would channel all her skills, her knowledge, and her unwavering belief in the power of truth to write a new chapter in the history of the galaxy. Anya found herself in a cramped, dimly lit room that smelled faintly of ozone and alien spices. A motley crew of individuals huddled around a makeshift table, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of a holographic projector. This was the heart of her latest endeavor, a narrative workshop, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the refugee settlement. It wasn't a grand diplomatic summit or a high-tech intelligence operation, but a humble gathering of storytellers, artists, and everyday citizens, united by a common goal, to reclaim their narrative. The participants were a diverse group, a grizzled former soldier with a talent for weaving tales of battlefield camaraderie, a young poet whose verses dripped with the pain of displacement, a holographic artist whose creations captured the ephemeral beauty of their new home, and a group of teenagers armed with datapads and a burning desire to create their own memes. Anya, with her understanding of the power of language and the psychology of persuasion, acted as a guide, a facilitator, and sometimes a gentle provocateur. She encouraged them to share their stories, their fears, their hopes, and their dreams. She helped them identify the manipulative tactics used by the Weaver's network to see through the distortions and half-truths that sought to divide them. They dissected news reports, analyzed social media posts, and even deconstructed the propaganda-laden messages that occasionally seeped through the settlement's communication channels. But they didn't stop there. They created their own stories, their own art, their own memes, a vibrant tapestry of voices that challenged the dominant narrative of fear and division. There were setbacks, of course. Old prejudices flared up, disagreements arose, and the temptation to respond to misinformation with anger and vitriol was ever present. But Anya, drawing upon her own experiences and the lessons she'd learned over the years, patiently guided them through the storm. She reminded them that the fight against propaganda wasn't just about exposing lies, but about building bridges of understanding. It wasn't about silencing opposing voices, but about creating a space where all perspectives could be heard and respected. And most importantly, it wasn't about achieving a perfect victory, but about the ongoing, messy process of building a more just and equitable society. The workshop became a sanctuary, a place where the wounds of the past could be healed and the seeds of a new future could be sown. The stories they told, the art they created, the memes they shared, they were not just weapons against misinformation, but a celebration of their resilience, their creativity, and their unwavering belief in the power of human connection. Anya's work in the refugee settlement began to attract attention, not just from those seeking her expertise, but from those who sought to silence her. The Weaver's network, though weakened, was far from defeated. They saw Anya's grassroots movement as a threat, a challenge to their carefully constructed narratives of fear and division. Threats arrived through encrypted channels, warnings that her meddling would not be tolerated. The local authorities, stretched thin and wary of provoking further conflict, urged her to be cautious, to dial back her activities. But Anya, fueled by a stubborn sense of purpose and the unwavering support of her team, refused to be intimidated. Instead, she doubled down on her efforts. She organized community forums, where refugees could share their experiences and voice their concerns. She worked with local media outlets to create educational programming that taught critical thinking skills and exposed the tactics of misinformation. She even collaborated with a group of musicians to create a song, its catchy melody and multilingual lyrics, a celebration of diversity and unity. The song, a surprising mix of traditional folk tunes and modern electronic beats, quickly became an anthem for the settlement. It was played in the streets, in the schools, and even in the makeshift bars where weary aid workers sought solace after long days. It became a symbol of defiance, a reminder that even in the face of fear and division, hope could flourish. The Weavers' network responded with a series of increasingly desperate attacks. They spread rumors of Anya being a spy, a traitor, a puppet of the Galactic Council. They hacked into the settlement's communication systems, flooding them with disinformation and hate speech. But Anya and her team were ready. They had learned to anticipate the Weavers' tactics, to recognize the patterns of their manipulation. They countered each lie with a carefully crafted truth, each attempt at intimidation with a message of hope and unity. The settlement's residents, once vulnerable to the whispers of fear, now rallied behind Anya, their voices a chorus of defiance against the forces of darkness. One day, a transmission arrived from a surprising source, a high-ranking member of the Galactic Council, a seasoned diplomat known for her pragmatism and unwavering commitment to peace. She had been following Anya's work with keen interest, impressed by her ability to bridge cultural divides and empower communities to resist manipulation. The diplomat offered Anya a platform, a chance to address the entire galactic community. It was a risky move, but one with the potential to turn the tide against the Weaver once and for all. Anya accepted, knowing that this was her chance to spread her message of hope and resilience to a galaxy still haunted by the echoes of war. Anya stood on the grand platform of the Galactic Council, a far cry from the makeshift podium she'd once addressed in desperation. The chamber was hushed, delegates from countless worlds leaning forward, their diverse eyes fixed on the unassuming human woman. Holographic screens broadcast her image across the galaxy, her words translated into a symphony of languages, dialects, and even a few experimental sensory communication modes Anya was still trying to wrap her head around. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice amplified across countless worlds. "We stand at a crossroads. We have the choice to succumb to the whispers of fear and division, to let the echoes of the past dictate our future, or we can choose a different path. A path of unity, of understanding, of resilience in the face of those who seek to manipulate us." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Then, with a subtle shift in tone, she shared a story not of grand battles or heroic victories, but of a small, forgotten outpost, of a classroom filled with children from different worlds, and of the unlikely friendships forged amidst the chaos of a refugee crisis. She spoke of the power of laughter to disarm and connect, of the importance of sharing stories, of the quiet courage it took to challenge the dominant narrative. She reminded them of the lessons learned during the war, the pain and suffering inflicted by the Krillian regime, and the hard-won peace that was now threatened by those who sought to rekindle the flames of conflict. The Weaver, and those who follow their path, offer you a simple narrative, a world of us versus them, of fear and division. But the galaxy is far more complex than that. We are a tapestry of cultures, languages, and experiences. We are capable of so much more than hate and suspicion. Anya's words resonated throughout the chamber, a ripple of hope spreading through the vast audience. Some delegates wept openly, others nodded in fervent agreement, while a few, hardened by cynicism, remained unmoved. But even they couldn't deny the power of her message, the raw honesty and unwavering belief in a better future. The broadcast ended, the silence in the chamber broken only by the soft hum of the holographic projectors. Then, a wave of applause erupted, a thunderous ovation that echoed across the galaxy. The news feeds lit up with messages of support, calls for action, and a renewed determination to resist the forces of misinformation. Anya stepped off the platform, exhausted but exhilarated. She had done what she could, used her voice to speak truth to power, to remind the galaxy of the fragile beauty of their shared existence. The fight was far from over, but a spark had been ignited, a message of hope sent across the stars. And in that moment, Anya knew that her legacy wouldn't be defined by the wars she'd fought, but by the peace she had helped to build, one carefully chosen word at a time. A decade after the Festival of Misunderstanding, Anya receives a coded transmission from a familiar source. It's Ziv, her unlikely ally from the Krell Roman 4 mining colony, now a respected figure in the galactic tech community. But his tone is grim, his words laced with a sense of urgency Anya hadn't heard in years. They're evolving, Ziv warns, his holographic image flickering with static. The Weaver, their tactics. They've learned, adapted. It's not just misinformation anymore. It's something darker. Anya listens intently, her mind racing as Ziv details a new wave of propaganda sweeping across the galaxy. It's not the clumsy, overt messaging of the past, but something far more insidious. These new narratives prey on deep-seated anxieties, stoking fears of societal collapse, ecological disaster, and the rise of a new, unnamed enemy. They don't directly target any specific species or government, but instead create a pervasive atmosphere of dread and uncertainty. It's not just about spreading lies, Ziv explains, his voice grim. They're manipulating emotions, creating a sense of helplessness, a longing for the good old days when things were supposedly simpler, safer. Anya recognizes the pattern, the echoes of a dangerous nostalgia that had plagued Earth's own history. It's the fertile ground where extremism thrives, where the longing for a mythical past can blind people to the opportunities of the present. We have to act, Anya declares, her voice firm despite the knot of dread forming in her stomach. We can't let them rewrite history, twist our shared narrative into something so bleak. Together, they analyze the data, trace the patterns of misinformation, and identify the key players. It's a new generation of manipulators, skilled in the art of emotional manipulation and digital subterfuge. They've learned from the mistakes of their predecessors, avoiding the overt aggression that once triggered alarm bells. Instead, they operate in the shadows, their messages seeping into the collective consciousness like a slow-acting poison. Anya knows she can't fight this battle alone. She reaches out to her network, the propagandist whisperers scattered across the galaxy. She calls upon her former students, now grown into influential leaders, educators, and artists. She even reaches out to Tsar, the once tyrant, now a surprising advocate for peace and understanding. The response is overwhelming. From every corner of the galaxy, voices rise up to challenge the darkness. Artists create subversive works that expose the absurdity of the fear-mongering narratives. Educators develop new curricula that teach emotional resilience and critical thinking. Diplomats work tirelessly to build bridges of understanding between species, reminding them of their shared history and common goals. Anya finds herself at the forefront of a new kind of resistance, a movement that doesn't rely on military might or political maneuvering, but on the power of stories, empathy, and the unwavering belief in the human capacity for hope. It's a battle fought in the hearts and minds of individuals, a struggle to reclaim the narrative of their shared future. Anya found herself on a desolate moon, its surface bathed in the eerie glow of its gas giant parent planet. The outpost here was a research station, a lonely outpost of scientific inquiry amidst a vast, uncharted nebula. Yet, even here, the echoes of the Weaver's manipulation reached. The researchers, a diverse team of humans and aliens, had become increasingly isolated, their communication channels flooded with distorted data and contradictory reports. The once vibrant atmosphere of collaboration had soured into suspicion and mistrust, fueled by whispers of espionage and hidden agendas. Anya had been summoned by the station's commander, a grizzled veteran of the Krillian War who bore the physical and emotional scars of the conflict. His voice, once a booming command, now held a weary tremor. "Dr. Lin," he said, his eyes searching hers for reassurance, "we're losing our grip. The data is corrupted. The reports are conflicting. It's like we're trapped in an echo chamber of doubt." Anya nodded, her heart heavy with a familiar weight of responsibility. She had seen this pattern before, the insidious way misinformation could erode trust and sow discord. But this time, it was personal. These were her people, the scientists and explorers who represented the best of humanity's thirst for knowledge and understanding. She spent days immersed in the station's data streams, sifting through the corrupted information, searching for patterns and inconsistencies. She interviewed the researchers, listened to their fears and frustrations, and helped them to see through the fog of doubt that had settled over them. Anya discovered that the source of the manipulation wasn't some grand conspiracy, but a far more mundane, yet equally dangerous, phenomenon. The station's communication systems had become vulnerable to a subtle form of hacking, a technique that subtly altered data, introduced inconsistencies, and amplified existing doubts. The culprit wasn't the weaver, but a group of disgruntled researchers who had become disillusioned with the slow pace of scientific progress and the lack of recognition for their work. They had turned their technical skills towards a twisted form of protest, seeking to disrupt the station's operations and sow chaos in the hopes of being heard. Anya confronted them, not with accusations, but with understanding. She listened to their grievances, acknowledged their frustrations, and offered them a different path. A path where their voices could be heard, their ideas valued, and their contributions recognized, not through sabotage, but through collaboration and open communication. It was a risky gamble, but Anya had learned to trust her instincts. And this time, her instincts told her that these researchers, despite their misguided actions, were not lost causes. They were scientists, driven by a thirst for knowledge and a desire to make a difference in the world. Her gamble paid off. The researchers, shamed and remorseful, confessed to their actions and agreed to help repair the damage they had caused. They worked tirelessly to restore the station's communication systems, to rebuild trust among the crew, and to create safeguards against future manipulation. The incident served as a stark reminder that the fight against misinformation was an ongoing battle, one that required constant vigilance and a willingness to confront the darkness within ourselves as well as the external threats. But it also reaffirmed Anya's belief in the power of human connection, the ability to find common ground even in the most divisive of circumstances.